Music. I'm going to use 19 because my battery went dead. When we were looking at the music and Jill had proposed that particular song, I listened to the first two verses and I went, this is perfect. How many people had the perfect father? And no. We're all finding our way home. Every single one of us is on a journey to find our way home. How many had the perfect home environment that absolutely nurtured you, that knew as you were finding your way back to the home of the divine essence of your very soul, just as the song beautifully said? How many had the perfect home environment that absolutely was nourishing to that journey? Not me. I come from a long line of atheists, and here I'm a minister. I've been working on a way to get home, and there was very little support from mom, from dad, from brother, from sisters. But the reality of the song, the lyric that hit me in that song, because if you wait for it, you got to it. We all can feel our way. Feel our way home, feel our way back, feel our way to that light. So no matter how dark your environment might be, no matter how difficult the experience of the family that you grew up in or the family that you're in right now, you have the ability to be completely blind and be in the dark and feel your way back to wholeness. Feel your way back to the perfection that you were born in and as. To feel your way back to a place of understanding and knowing without the celebration of mom and dad, without the celebration and the acknowledgement of who you truly are, that you can still be there. You can still find there. And there's a whole bunch of people walking the planet that gave all the power to dad, all the power to mom. And we're perpetually waiting for them to validate us. And the reality is we have the ability to validate ourselves. And on Father's Day, it can be a difficult day for a lot of us. It can be very difficult, just as Mother's Day can be. But I want you to know that no matter how dark or different you wanted your life to be at home with mom and dad, that you have the ability to be the home, to be the veritable presence of the light that you are seeking. And you may never, ever, ever get that validation, but I'm asking you to open a corner of your mind to take that power back. How many people had the perfect father? How many people had the perfect home environment? Guess what? That connects us. We're all one in that. Perfection is an illusion. You know, here's a reality. I'm going to talk specifically about fathers today, and I'm doing it a little bit differently than usual. I'm going to sit because I'm going to get real tender with you. My daddy issues are up. We need a license to drive a car. You need a license to have a car. You need a license to have a dog. You need a license to get married. You need a license to operate heavy machinery. You need a license to have a business. But there is no license required to be a father. In fact, there is no class required how to be a father. There is no training on how to be a dad. I'm living proof of that. What does that mean? It means that there's a lot of guys out there that are wandering around the desert for 40 years trying to figure it out. A lot of guys that are, even after years and years and years of raising a family, are still trying to figure the puzzle out. How do I be a good dad? How can I give that which I don't even know exists within me? There's a lot of dads that are resembling the guy in the parking lot. You ever seen the guy in the parking lot? I've been that guy. I got to look cool. I'm going to look cool here, but I have no idea where I parked the car. And we don't want anybody to see that we're vulnerable. That's something that was trained out of us, to be vulnerable, you know. So we stroll like, I'm just want to walk up and down every aisle because I'm enjoying the sunshine. And the reality is everybody in the parking lot can see it on your face. You have absolutely no idea where you are. There's a lot of dads that resemble that guy. They're walking up and down the aisles trying to find home, trying to find the car. And they're as blind as you are, trying to find your way in your relationship with your father. And it's important that we recognize that. I'm asking you to cut a little bit of slack to your dad. Maybe your dad wasn't evil or bad or wrong or stupid. Maybe he was just trying to figure the equation out. And some of you had really, really difficult and abusive situations with your father. But let me tell you, as I struggled with that today, those of you who had just minor irritations with your dad, and those of you who suffered at the hand with abuse, the same principle applies. Because in the mind of God, there is only the presence and power of God everywhere present. And our job is to return to our principles and know the truth that there is not a place where the presence of God does not exist, and that means even in your father. I'm asking you to suspend hate today. I'm asking you to suspend judgment today. Now, there are some of you that are like, I had the perfect father. Good on you. But some of the principles that I'm going to speak today also apply to you because there's more of your father to see. When you take that look and you take a deep dive into something more profound, there's more of your great father to see. There's more of your abusive father to see. There's more of your father that perhaps you have missed to see. You know, the only training that many of us dads got is watching our fathers wander around that parking lot. All I did was see Dad wandering around the parking lot, and I either just perpetuated the mistakes, just absolutely lived them because it's the only example I had. The only training I had is watching Dad and Grandpa try to figure it out, and they never did, but I'll just keep it going because I don't know anything else. Or I ran so far away from what Dad did that I went to the opposite extreme, and I'm still trying to figure it out, and I'm still messed up. Consider on this Father's Day that your dad wasn't mean or evil or stupid, but simply lost. His mistakes, however severe they might have been, stemmed from a lack of knowledge. That's it. Didn't know what he didn't know. It took me 35, 36, 37 years to learn that about my father, and I thought about, what did I miss? What good did I possibly miss? Here's something to consider today. The common denominator, there is a common denominator to fatherhood, and it is imperfection. There is a common denominator to every father. It is imperfection, and it is perfection in the imperfection. We like to celebrate at Unity North our humanness. We love to celebrate our humanness and know that it's all taking us to the place of home. As we're finding our way back home, we need to cut the same slack to our fathers who are lost in the parking lot. We cut ourselves a great deal of slack to be fully human. I screw up, I make mistakes. Yep, it's just me. But we don't give the same consideration to our fathers. And I'm saying on this Father's Day, give that consideration to him. You know, moms seem to have an intuitive nature to grab hold of how to do it. You never see a woman wandering in the parking lot. I can be wandering up and down, and my wife will go, well, just hit the horn, honk, there's the car, and they find it in a matter of seconds. But the reality is, intuition is a divine feminine quality. And we all have it because we are created in the image and after the likeness of God, which is male and female alike, a thinking and a feeling nature all in one. But from the minute that a man enters this field of being on the human existence, it is trained out of us. Don't be humble. Don't be intuitive. Be a man and rely on yourself and your strength and alone. Be a man. So any training we might have had, any organic sense of intuition to help us find home, to help us find the car, to help us find out how to be a father, was actually pulled out of us by age 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. Consider that your father. Put your father in that box, in that perspective, and begin to look at him a little bit differently. Begin to understand that imperfection was there, and that intuition is a feminine trait that was actually removed from our toolbox. And we're asking fathers to go around. We've removed 6, 7, 8 tools from the toolbox, saying that's weak, that's feminine, you don't do that, now go lead. So a bunch of fathers have had all their tools, their divine feminine nature squashed and pulled away from them, and then we tie their hands and their feet and say, now go be the best father in the world. I'm sorry, it took me till I was 35, 36, 37 to see that in my own father. And when I began to see my dad differently, everything began to shift. Not only with my relationship with my dad, but my relationship with my children and my grandchildren. You know, I was talking to Brian Perry. Brian Perry is a very good friend. He's doing a talk today over at One World on fatherhood, and we're like, man, this is such a difficult subject to try and deal with. And we came up with this great analogy that is absolutely the next level of epiphany for me and my dad. I want a carton of milk. I really need milk for my family. I really want milk for myself. And so I go to the hardware store. And I ask them to give me a gallon of milk for my family. And they say, well, we don't sell milk here. We don't have milk here. We've got a lot of wonderful things here to offer you, but we don't do milk. And then you proceed to, in the hardware store, throw a fit. I want milk. Give me milk. I came here for milk, and I'm not leaving till I get milk. Here's a reality. A lot of dads don't have milk to to offer. And if we perpetually throw the fit in the hardware store of our relationship with our fathers, that we're not getting what we think they should provide, we are missing a whole lot of cool stuff in the hardware store. We're blinded. We have blinded ourselves only to our own needs. And worse yet than not getting it from a father, you're not going to get milk, you're not going to get hardware, you're not going to get a screwdriver or a hammer or anything, because you're so angry and upset that he's not giving you the milk, that then you don't go to the next store, right next door, that has the milk, because it's my father's responsibility to give it to me. I want you to hear that. A lot of us expected dads to give us things they didn't have. And then we curse them, and we judge them, and we blame them, and we're angry to our deathbed about my father who didn't give me what I needed. I am asking for 3 things today on this fatherhood. Whether you had a perfect father or you had the abusive father, it's the same principle that applies. 3 divine ideas in the mind of God that I'm asking you to download into your field that you may go to a deeper place. Number 1 is forgiveness. Forgiveness. The cornerstone of the master teacher's whole teaching. Forgiveness from start to finish. Jesus' whole life was about forgiveness. The second thing is I'm asking you to shift a perspective, to begin to look a different way. Jesus said, turn the other cheek. I'm saying look a different way. This is how I have judged my father. This is how I have defined my father. I'm saying turn the cheek and look a different way and maybe see a dimension of the man that you had not seen before. Maybe he wasn't such an SOB. Maybe he was just lost in a parking lot and he did his best. And then I want you to develop some understanding. Understanding of what he had, what he didn't have, who he was and who he was not. Let's begin with forgiveness. You know, have you noticed in the religious environments that our forefathers, our founding religious leaders, have absolutely created a God in our image? A whole line of men that have created God in the image of a capricious, angry, vengeful, punishing father that looks just like me except with a big white beard. My beard would be white, but I put a little mascara in it today for video. But the reality is a whole line of people, a whole line of men created God in that image. And I have spent a lifetime forgiving those men as I have retrained my view of the infinite. I have spent a whole lot of time retraining the cells in my body, in my mind, in my heart, and my soul through the forgiveness of those who did the best they knew how when they were creating religion and trying to understand God. I take the energy they gave me and I redirect it. And as I considered Father's Day, I said, why have I not spent that much time forgiving my father? I spent a lot more time with a bunch of men forgiving them that I have never met, never will meet, that have no control or power and no place in my heart. Yet the man that lives closest to me in my heart, I have not spent 30 seconds of time forgiving. What if I gave him the same consideration that I have given? You know, it says in Scripture that we are created in God's image, male and female alike, spiritual. I think that on the Father's Day, we can transcend a little bit of our human condition, because it's not who we are, our human grievances and our human judgments, and go up to the place of being the very presence of God and finding a place of spiritual forgiveness. To see my father as lost, not evil. To see him as the fumbling man in the parking lot, as opposed to intentionally making my life miserable. He was just trying to figure out how to do fatherhood. And I'm just trying to figure that out. I'm asking each of you to consider, can you compassionately open a portion of your mind that you, that we, that all of us, out of our frustration of not getting milk from Dad, have created an image that isn't necessarily true? I want you to consider that you have made an icon out of your unrealized expectations of that man. And maybe your father was perfect. There's another man in your life that you've made an idol out of your unrealized expectations. You didn't give me milk, so you're awful and bad. To put any face, put your mother's face on it. Put your brother's face on it. I don't care whose face, because you are the father of your reality. And what your father did or what anybody did 10 years ago or 10 minutes ago is not the determining factor of whether you're in heaven or hell. It is your thought about it. It is your holding on to the souvenirs of hell. C.S. Lewis talks about the souvenirs of hell. I know I talk about this a lot. We're carrying around these stones in our pockets, and we pull them out at parties. You say, look at this stone. This is when my father did this, and my father did that, and did this. You want to hold it? And we pass it around the room, and we massage it. These stones are smooth, absolutely smooth. The room adds their energy to it, their support of my victimhood, and I put them back in my pockets, and they're a little bit heavier. And then I have another experience at a family reunion with my father, and I get another rock. I call my dad on Father's Day, and there it is. I need another stone in my pocket. And then guess what? Before too long, you are weighted down with stones in your pocket, resentments that have nothing to do except with your belief system about who your dad is. Give me milk, Dad. I want milk, Dad. Dad doesn't have milk. Dad's a hardware store. So get what you can from him and then go elsewhere to get the milk. But that starts with forgiveness. You know, the reality is, as the song talked about, we're all just finding our way home. Are you considering that when you were in the dark trying to find the love that you desperately wanted as a child, maybe that you're trying to find right now at 60 or 70 years old, that your dad's wandering around the same dark room, and you put kids in a dark room as dad's trying to figure it out, guess what? You're going to inevitably stand on toes. You're going to step on toes. That's what dads do. Finding their way home, they are stepping on your toes as a child. It is not intentional. I want you to hear that. It is not intentional. It just happens because you're both in the dark together. So it takes perspective. So I want you to consider a false idol of your unmet needs is not necessarily a true story, but the confused and lost man underneath. Jesus said this on the cross, in the midst of crucifixion. He's up there, and this is what he had to say. Please read this with me. Abba, forgive them, for they do not know what they are doing. On this Father's Day, I'm saying if you want healing, if you want to get to the next level of healing, Charles Fillmore, our co-founder, said, sit down for 20 minutes every day and forgive everybody everything. Put your dad at the front of the line on Father's Day. Forgive everybody everything. I'm going to take Jesus' words, and please forgive me if this is a sacrilege. I'm going to burn in hell. This is what I think that this is the prayer we need to be praying, channeling our Christ awareness. Let's say it together. Daddy, I forgive you, for you didn't know what you were doing. Big, big shift from, let me pull out my souvenir of hell. This is what my dad did to me. And I've allowed him to do it to me every day since. Here, I got another one. This is what Dad did to me. And I'm living in a victimhood. Today, I'm asking you to forgive your father for no other reason than you're hanging around with a bunch of stones in your pocket, a lot of hot coals. Daddy, I forgive you. This is living from the Christ. This is what our purpose is, to know the light of our being and to live from that place. That starts with forgiveness. Healing starts, one, with forgiving yourself for the judgments, the terrible hatred and judgments that you put on a man who was just lost. And then you can open up a field, just a corner of your mind, that I can forgive the man who hurt me so deeply because nobody can hurt you. I will refuse to allow you to be a victim in my presence because I see you as so much more than that. And I'm inviting you into that energy with your father, your brother, whoever it might be. He didn't have milk. He was a hardware store. And when you open up that forgiveness, then your perspective begins to shift. I want you to look at this cartoon. Let's go and put the cartoon up. This is your relationship. You as a child, a son, a daughter, are on an island going, thank God, he's going to rescue me. The milk is on its way. And your dad is in a boat on the other side going, thank God, there's somebody who's going to help me figure this out. When you have that perspective, everything begins to shift. Everything. The healing that you seek begins to emerge. But you have to be the conduit to say, gosh, both of us have been lost for a long time. Come on over to my island and let's figure this out together. Yeah, you're a screw-up, Dad. Yeah, I'm a screw-up too. And we're going to figure this out on the island together. We need to seek first to understand and then to be understood. And there's a whole bunch of children walking around the planet that are not living that teaching of the Christ essence. I need to seek first to understand the pain. the confusion, the difficulty of I can't find my car. And grab my father's hand and say, let's go find the car together. Let's go find the car together. I want to share a few stories about my father. We have 4 kids in our family. I have a twin brother and 2 younger sisters. And when we knew my dad was coming home, we'd hide behind a wall, a corner. And we'd ask, I wonder which dad's going to be coming in tonight. Is it going to be the grouchy, angry, yelling father? Or is it going to be the kind man? Because my father could be very, very fun. He's a much better grandpa than he ever was a father. It was about 10% that the nice guy came home. And I cursed my father for years and years and years about, I want milk, Dad. You're coming home from work. I haven't seen you all day. Can you give me some milk? That dad very rarely showed up in my field. And so you go hide in your room until he cools off. And I began to, out of my forgiving my father for that kind of behavior, is to have a different perspective. And suddenly I had new eyes. He who has eyes to see and ears to hear will see and hear differently. And do you believe? I'm asking you, do you believe that not only the power of your word, the power of your thoughts, the power of your imagination can not only change the experience you're having in this moment, but it can change the past? Is it possible to change the past? I don't know what your answer is. Mine is yes, because I changed everything about my relationship with my dad. With a little bit of shifting my attention, I got to see a father who worked extremely long, hard hours. Up at work at 6 o'clock in the morning, coming home at 7 o'clock at night. Why? To pay for my music lessons. To pay for my therapy. See, I was a pretty screwed up kid. And therapy is not cheap. Thank God the piano became my therapist. Anybody have kids involved in sports? I was involved in a lot of sports. There's nothing cheap about being in sports. And he did this for 4 kids. The other 3 were not as screwed up as I was. But the reality is I began to see a man who wasn't bad, who wasn't grouchy, who wasn't mean, but was tired. Everything melted away. All the resentments, all the pain went away. And I got to see how beautiful was my father, working a job for his whole life that he hated, because he was giving me a gift that I was blind to see. How much joy did we lose because it took me till I was 36 or 37 to figure that out? And when I began to shift my mindset, guess what? My dad showed up differently. The Father's Day phone calls were different because I shifted first. And my father, for the first time in 35, 36, 37 years, said, you know what, I wish I would have done better. I was a little lost. I didn't really know how to do it. You see, that's not an epiphany. Every father's got the same thing, and I just opened up a possibility for my father to own it, to say, sorry. Wayne Dyer says this quote. I'm going to invite you to say this with me. You got it? Together. If you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. And that's not just in the moment. That is in the past as well. When I began to cut slack to my father, he cut me a lot of slack too. And we had a view of each other. Yeah, you weren't my screwed up son that I had to pay therapy for. You were lost. Yeah, you weren't my screwed up father. You were lost too. Let's figure this out, and maybe we'll be half as good as Mom on the other side. My dad loved to give lectures. You know, my mom could get her lecture over in 30 seconds. I loved my mom for that. And then Dad would come in after we cooled off, and he'd say, sit down, son. Sometimes those lectures would go for 2.5 hours. You think my sermons are long. And I'd sit there for 2.5 hours sometimes of torture, yelling, a tirade, anger, upset. It was complete and total torture until when I was 36, 37, I flipped a switch in my head. And I began to see the magic of my father, who was desperate to find the right words. And it wasn't about lecturing me for 2.5 hours. It was like, let me find the right words to take your pain away, son. I don't know how to take away the night terrors. I don't know how to take away the constant anxiety, the ulcers that you have as a middle school child and high school kid. I don't know how to take it away. So you get to sit here and, as ineffective as it is, be showered with my love the only way I know how to show love. I'm a hardware store and I can't give you milk, but I'm going to talk here for 2.5 hours to try and figure it out. My dad showered me with love for 2.5 hours, and I could not receive that love because I was blind. I was the one that was lost. And when I began to see my dad differently, a healing began to happen. I wasn't abused. I was loved. Now that's a hard one. That's a hard one. Daddy, I forgive you, for I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know how to receive. One of the moments with my father that was most meaningful was my father taught me how to make a fire. See, we couldn't look at each other because that was trained out of us. He was trained by his father. You don't look a man in the eye because those are fighting. That's fighting time. So we'd sit at the fire, and he taught me how to build a fire. How do you poke the fire just right to keep it alive? How do you give it air? How do you give it air inside the fire so that it can breathe? How do you play with the fire just enough that you get all the beautiful colors of blue and green and yellow in a wonderful combination? And we would talk about things in that moment because it wasn't too vulnerable. As I prepared for this talk today, I looked at that moment with my father and said, he's a devout atheist, but he contextualized my ministry today. The lessons I learned sitting on the hearth of a fireplace from my father. What I do as a minister here is I keep poking the fire. When I see that the fire is about to go out, poke. How do I keep it going? How do I create space in the environment? How do I keep that fire going? Because Sabbath is so vitally important. And I didn't get the idea of Sabbath from the endless lessons at a ministerial school about self-care. I got it from my father, who planted in the importance of what he couldn't live for himself. I'll work 19 hours so that I can get my kid through therapy. He didn't have a Sabbath. Everything began to shift in me. My perspective shifted. I put different glasses on, and I began to see how beautiful that man was, and how beautiful it was, those brief moments on a hearth that I couldn't see. Be the change you want to see in the environment of your family. See your mom, see your dad, see your brother, see your sister with different eyes. Be that shift and that change. And let me tell you, there is no endless amount of good that can come if you are willing to do so. Be the first one to take the step back. Be the first one to look different. Be the first one to make the phone call and say, you know what, I've judged you for a long time. I got to be done with that. I called my dad, and the reason this is so emotional to me is that some of the lessons I had with my dad took 57 years. And I got one this week. I called my father as I was preparing for Father's Day. And he picked up the phone, as he does, and usually the conversation is a matter of 30 seconds before he says, I'll get your mom. But this one was quite a bit longer. And I just wasn't going to give him the option to get off the phone. I wanted to talk to him because my dad loves music. My dad loved music, and I wanted to pick his brain about the perfect song to play on Father's Day at the church. And I wanted to reminisce because my dad would listen to great songs, or he'd listen to me play songs on the piano, songs that I could play because he paid for me to have the lessons to play those songs. And he was stumbling. He was stumbling a lot. He didn't remember the songs. He didn't recognize my voice. And after 3 minutes of me babbling on about history, my father said, I'm sorry, I think you have the wrong number. And a part of me said, I've had the wrong number for a lot of years. And that perhaps my father was going to slip away before his body slipped away. Now, I can make that mean 100 things. We got on track, and we had a nice laugh, and he blamed it on his hearing aids. But there was a moment of feeling very lost in a parking lot for me. I don't know what to do for him. And suddenly there was a massive healing with my father that never would have been possible had I not been willing to have a little understanding. And I got to see how beautiful my father is and was, fumbling his way in the dark, making his way in the parking lot, probably still looking for the car. My father used to love to hear me play piano as a child. It was a wonderful moment. And I would sit down at the piano, and no matter where Dad was on the ranch, he would come and he would sit in his chair. And he had a look, probably feeling very responsible for that because he paid for those lessons. And there was a song that I used to love to play that he loved. He doesn't remember it. Starry, Starry Night. Piano solo, a tribute to Vincent van Gogh. And I find out how ironic that is. Starry, Starry Night, a man who lost his mind. The lyrics of that song flashed upon the screen of my mind as I processed that 3-minute window with my father and a lifetime with my father, wondering who was blind and who was lost. And I changed just a word or two as my final prayer before I bring Jill back up here, who's going to sing a song that is just perfect to put an exclamation point on this talk. These are the words from Starry, Starry Night. Now I understand what you tried to say to me and how you suffered for your sanity and how you tried to set me free. I would not listen. I did not know how. But Dad, I'm listening now. I'm inviting you to take one relationship on this Father's Day, whether it be your dad or another. Come on up, Jill. One relationship, and listen a little bit deeper. You know, there's a moment that we all have when our parents, they're heroes. They know everything. They know everything. They are Superman. And there's a moment when you realize that Superman is a flawed human being. That Superman doesn't necessarily have it all together. And that is a beautiful moment as well. For my dad, it was sitting on the Ferris wheel. My dad could do no wrong. And we got to the top of the Ferris wheel, and they stopped as they were loading people down below. And being the child that I was, I went, yes! And all I heard was, stop! Superman faded before my eyes and became a white sheet, white-knuckled on the edge of that lean back now. I'm asking you to have the eyes that go back. It says you must become a child to enter the kingdom of heaven. I'm saying go back to the moment when you can see your father as the superhero, your mother as the superhero, because that was not a false image. There was something there where the Christ of you beheld that Christ, and all of a sudden life got in the way. Life got in the way, and you made an assessment. Dump the assessment, get rid of the souvenir of hell, and behold the hardware store Superman who couldn't provide milk that lives in your heart. How beautiful, how beautiful. Jill's going to sing a song right now to take those words. Let it be the context and the foundation for this Father's Day. And then we'll go into meditation at the end of this song.
I've seen you struggle, I've seen you stumble and get back up again. I've seen you worry, and I've seen the courage that shines in you, my friend. You inspire me, and cannot see. How beautiful, how beautiful, how beautiful you are. How beautiful, how beautiful, how beautiful you are. When I'm losing hope at the end of my rope, I find strength in your eyes. 'Cause you walked alone on the darkest of roads, and your spirit still shines. You inspire me to live courageously. Sing it with me this time. How beautiful, how beautiful, how beautiful you are. How beautiful, how beautiful, how beautiful you are. Oh, how beautiful you are.
Indeed. I invite you, please, to take a breath, and on that breath, if you're able or willing, to close your eyes. There is a center, a wonderful, beautiful center where the loving Father abides. I invite you to rest in that love, that Father's love, the creative force that caused you to be. The fathering, sheltering, nurturing, sustaining presence is the Father. The paternal caring for all that is consists of love. Feel yourself surrounded by this sustaining love. Feel this love holding you safe, holding you sacred, holding you as itself. Allow forgiveness of yourself for whatever you've accused this Father's love as being. Allow the past to fall away and wallow in the pristine presence of this great love. The cause of your being is the Father. It holds you in sacred prominence as itself, expressing each and every moment you abide in the flesh you wear. And when the time comes for you to lay the flesh aside, this Father will say, "Well done, my good and faithful self." Feel the essence, the presence of this great love as you enter into the silence. And as you emerge from the silence, know that you are the love of the Father here on this earth. And so it is.
Thank you, Cecilia. You are the father of your own joy. You are the father of your own peace. You are the father of your own healing. And how beautiful, beautiful you are. Act as if. Right now, I'm going to invite you to take whatever gifts you have and know it means a great deal to this community. Your generosity in its many forms, whether it be on the consistent giving program, whether it be cash or check or you text to give, it is making this church hum, and it's allowing us to provide wonderful opportunities. So we are grateful for every bit of generosity expressed. Take that gift and place it upon your heart, and I invite you to say with me with one powerful voice this affirmation up on the screen right here. Together, I am so blessed, I am so prosperous, and it is my great pleasure to share of my prosperity and to share of my blessings. And in the giving, the entire world is blessed. Thank you, God. Amen. Come by, you already going to invite you to please stand and to join hands. You are so blessed. You are so beautiful. And when we join hands together, we're the most powerful force on the planet as fathers and mothers of our own experience, not only here in this room, but we are affecting the entire humanity. And so I wanted to end the service with the song, Jill's song, how beautiful you are. And so, very simple words, Danielle, you know them, right? And so I'm going to invite you to send as a wave around this community, a wave to every person here, the ones that might be hurting or the ones that are the moms and dad that seem to have it all together. How beautiful you are.
How beautiful, how beautiful, how beautiful you are. How beautiful, how beautiful, how beautiful you are.
Let's raise those hands and look around the room. Send that love.
How beautiful, how beautiful, how beautiful you are. How beautiful, how beautiful, how beautiful you are.
Let this Father's Day be the one that you make the phone call, that you write the letter, and know how beautiful you are. Please go see Jill. Go see Richard in the lobby. Thanks so much. Have a wonderful Father's Day. We'll see you next Sunday.